This is part 2 of how to create forms in the DocScanFx application. Prior to this, we created this radiologist downtime prelim form. I'm going to open this back up in the form editor. And this time we're going to point out some other features. When we click on any one of these text fields or any of these controls, these data entry points that we've created, we get this properties box. I just kind of want to go over this a little bit more. We briefly touched on the controls for being able to reposition and to change the width of the control. Over here on the side in the view mode, you can decide whether the field is going to be a read-only, whether it's required, whether the person has to fill that section out, or this one where they could leave it blank. Obviously the font size we already touched on. You can pre-populate the field with some information, so if you wanted to do something like a visual hint, type patient name here, you could do something like that, although nothing would prevent them from just leaving that there and having that show up on the form. What we really want to show up on that particular line is the patient's name. So I'm going to type 2 curly brackets, and as soon as we do that, it'll actually disappear and you'll get this drop-down list of all the available, call these macros, that can be inserted in. These are all values that will be replaced with information either from the computer or out of the exam that's currently selected that you're adding images to. But we want on this line for the patient name to show up. So again, I just did 2 curly brackets. If I actually start typing part of what I want, it'll narrow the list down even more. I want the patient name to show up here. And there's really no reason anybody would change this patient name because and there's really no reason we want anybody to change the patient name, so we're going to make this be a read-only field. And you can see it changes to this rose color to show that no one can edit that field. The other item I'll point out that's down here is that we actually can name this field something. So I'm going to type in patient name. You don't have to do this, but you'll see a little bit later why it becomes important. Now there is an opportunity to put in a tip here. This would be hover text so that if someone put their cursor over a field, it would end up telling them what they are supposed to do with that field. There isn't anything really to say about these a field that's automatically filled in and that's read-only, so I'm going to leave that blank for now. And then there's also a description section down here. If you were needing to sort of explain to someone else who might come into this form what this field is for, you could put some information down here. It doesn't affect the form for the end user. I'm going to close that. Let's do the same thing for this medical record number field. I'm just going to do those 2 curly brackets, start typing out patient, and we'll pick this patient ID, and we'll make it read-only. And obviously we need to add in more fields as we go down the side here. And I forgot to name this field. I want to name this patient MRN. And let's come down to the findings section and go into the options here, and we will call this findings. And this time we're going to write a tip in here. Enter your prelim report here. Close that. Okay, and then let's show a few more options for the radiologist, this list down here. Now, it doesn't apply so much to this list, but you can color the different entries in the list. So say you had a drop-down list on an ultrasound form that was saying about the quality of the exam, or some values that you wanted to report on within a vascular ultrasound study, and you wanted to call out from a list when the values were out of range and have them be a certain color. You can enter something in here and just use this box in order to choose a color before you click the plus sign. So we'll do Dr. Sam Ferris. So we'll click on this black box right here where we can now go and pick one of these colors, but we can narrow this down even more. If we knew that we wanted to pick some blue color for this doctor or for this entry, you could just type blue and it would show you a bunch of options that are in the blue range. And then when we click on this, we'll see now that we have Dr. Sam Ferris in blue. And again, this doesn't really apply for a radiologist name list, but in other scenarios where you're using a drop-down, you very well may want to color in the entries. And then these checkboxes. Right now, these are just 2 separate checkboxes that are able to both be marked, and we don't want that. We want to only be able to mark one at a time. So if you draw a box around both those checkboxes, and so they're highlighted, or click one and hold down Control and click on the other. And you could do 2, 3, 4, however many checkboxes you needed to do for this. And you right click and you click on Group. You'll see now that this dot in the corner of both those changed to being blue. These are linked together now. So if you click on yes and then turn around and click on no, the yes will become unchecked. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about making it easy to make sure things are lined up on your screen. Like I can tell that this yes and this no aren't lined up correctly right now. So if you highlight both of them and you right click on them, there's some options to align their left edge, right edge, align the top and the bottom. I'm going to choose align the top. And it ends up lining up the last one that was clicked with the first one that was clicked along the top edge. So that makes sure that they're even across the top. You also can highlight two things or more using the Control key and then use the arrow keys in order to shift them around a little bit. Now, we skipped adding in a bunch of different features up here, different text entry boxes. It was a little bit cumbersome, I think you could tell, that you were going to add in a box and have to choose the font size and the width of it every time. So what you can do is you can right-click on one of these that you have configured already, and then choose this Save as Preset and just call it something like, say, well, this is about my medium-sized text entry box. So we'll click on that, and now if we go to add in one line for the date of birth, we can just click, doesn't really matter how big it is, and we will choose our medium preset size. And it automatically becomes what we had saved, the medium preset for this. Now the date of birth is also going to be a read-only field, and we will enter in patient date of birth and close that. And we will mark both of these and right-click and do align to left, and now we know those are both lined up. And so now we will do another one and make this a medium. This is the exam name, so I'm going to again pull that from the information that we already have about the exam and choose the exam description. I'm not going to make this one be a read-only. It'll fill in with the information, but it's possible the end user filling this form out might want to add something if the exam was slightly different from what was ordered. Close that. I'm going to add in the exam date. So we'll do another one of these, medium exam date. And I will consider that that doesn't need to be changed, so I'm going to make that one be read-only. And the reason for the exam, medium exam reason, and the provider. Make that medium. It's not provider, it's just physician. There we go. And so now I'm going to highlight all of these. Now I got their left edge lined up. I'm going to use the arrow keys to just scoot them all over a little bit. And then a few of these aren't really positioned correctly for the row that they're on, so I'm just going to manually do those. I'm just using the arrow keys on the keyboard. I left reason for exam and provider also as not read-only fields in case somebody wanted to manually edit those. Looks like the last field we need to add in down here is this date time field. So we're going to, again, do that one line, and I'll go ahead and do medium again just in order to get that, easily get the font size set. Obviously that width isn't going to work. Scoot that right about there. Just to make it look nice, I will highlight, just make it, close that. I'll highlight both of these, actually, in that order. And I'll line up the left edge. Now we want to have the date and the time show up in this box, so we've got a few other macros we're going to use here. I'm going to do the two curly brackets. I'm going to do now month, and I'm going to do a backslash. I'm going to do two more curly brackets. So I have the month, I'm going to do the day, and I'm going to do another backslash, two curly brackets, and the year. And this is just for right now. It says now month, now day, now year. It's just picking out the time right now. And then I'm going to do a few spaces, and I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to choose the now hour. I'm going to do a colon, And I'll choose the now minute. And just in case that might be a little bit big, I'll drop this font size down some. We'll close that out. And in fact, let's go ahead and make this read only as well. And we will close this. And yes, we want to save it. And now let's try using our form. So you can see that all the patient information filled in correctly. We could come over here and change something about the exam name if we wanted. Change anything about the reason for the exam. If the provider happened to have been wrong or they wanted to add another name in there, they could. They can type in the findings section. You can see that we got a date and a time automatically down here. And there is an option about contacting the provider. And you see that those are grouped checkboxes. And we have a blue Sam Ferris that we can choose from as well. And when we close this, there's our form all filled out. Now, let's go back to it again, because maybe somebody doesn't want to click through these fields. There's a tab order to these fields. Tabbed, it should have gone down to this field. And you can see it did go down to this field here. I don't know where I'm at right now. I just hit tab. Just hit tab again. The tab order on these is all wrong because we added these fields all out of order. So we can adjust that too. Let's go ahead and get out of here and not save any changes to that. Go back into Forms, right-click, edit the template. So if we want to rearrange the order, the tab order of how someone would just tab through these different fields to fill it out, we just right-click on the background and choose this Order tab index. I'm going to scoot this over to the side. Actually, I'll put it on this side. And you can see that this small little tag is showing up in the corner of each one of the different field entries here. And that is showing the order, the tab order, for how they got added into the application. If you choose Auto Reorder, it'll go through and just name them top to bottom, or number them from top to bottom. You can see when it gets down to the bottom here that 9, that this 10 and 11 were maybe just a pixel or so higher. So it put those higher up than this last field, which really wouldn't matter because this isn't a field that needs to be filled in anyways. Now you'll notice that these correspond, and if I click on one of these, it highlights it with this green outline right here. We know that that's the control, or if I click on MRN, that that's the control. If I had named every one of these controls in that other portion of the properties box, we'd have the nice name down the side here. So sometimes that's just another use for doing that name, that if you needed to come in here and reorder a bunch of the tab order index, that it's easy to find which one you're on. But if not, you can just click on any one of these and it shows you which one's highlighted. Which I bring that point out that if two of them were out of order, if you highlight both of them and click swap, it'll actually just flip-flop them around, and now this one is number 7 and this one is number 6. So that's an easy way in order to fix things. Otherwise, the auto reorder usually gets everything into being pretty close. The final option that you could do would be to, if they were all correct up to a certain point, maybe you wanted this to be 9, 10, 11, 12, you'd click on this one here and you'd choose Manual from Selected. And you would say this one is going to be 9, this one is going to be 10, this one's going to be 11, 12. So I'm just clicking through and it's renumbering them based on the clicks. And then we just close this box and save the form. I should point out finally though that you also can disable whether when somebody's on the form, you can make it so that they're not allowed to draw on it if you uncheck this box. And if you don't want them to be able to use those ad hoc tools for just adding text anywhere, you can uncheck this box. So if you wanted them to only use what you gave them on the form, you would uncheck both of those, but most of the time it's good to leave those checked. All right, that's it for this video. Join us for the last one where we'll be going over some of the logic settings and editing of the images and the thumbnail pictures and just getting into it a little bit deeper.